Welcome back to our Father's Day special, everyone. You know, there's no rule book when it comes to parenting and tackling all of the changes that our children go through, which is why it's so important that we learn from each other. Here to share their fatherhood journey are Bruce Sellery and his partner, Dennis Garnhum. I don't see you enough.
I know.
Well, I'm happy you're here today. So I want to talk a little bit about being a parent now and your childhood growing up. Like, how is your family different now, the dynamic, than when you were growing up?
It's completely different.
Completely
I was
different.
the youngest of 5 children in a chaotic household. My parents separated when I was 10 years old. And you said there was no rules of parenting. There were rules in my house, a lot of rules. And they weren't so much rules, they were like the law of gravity.
Yes.
So you had fruit and then you could have 2 cookies, that was it. In our family today, I mean, Asher and Dennis would say there are rules. I don't think there are rules. But there's only the 2 of us. We're happily married, and so our home, it's just very different having 3 people under one roof versus 7.
Yes, I imagine.
Yeah.
You don't have to fight for the last piece of chicken.
I still do.
Right?
It's not even married, and I'm like, that's mine! Give it to me! Oh, is that, we're good?
It's so tragically true.
Right?
It's true.
This is what happens, right?
I forget.
So how's the family dynamic different than when you were growing up, Dennis?
Much different. So I'm the youngest
Yeah.
of 5, like Bruce as well.
That is so wild that both of
crazy.
you were the youngest of 5.
Yeah.
You were meant to find each other.
Mother's favorites.
Yes. Your babies.
We were.
The babies.
We were. But I grew up on the poorer side of town
Yes.
than Bruce did. We are both from London, Ontario. But we also, I grew up being a parent wanting my kid to have everything I didn't have. So, you know, Asher asked, we just throw everything their way.
Yes.
Anything they want. I'm kidding.
Right, right.
I'm with the financial guy.
But that's interesting, though, because you see how your childhood is going to inform how you parent.
Big time.
Right? You both have had to tackle some conversations a lot of parents might not experience, but still need to understand, which is why we're having this conversation. So we're going to talk a bit about gender identity. Asher came to you and approached you both about their gender identity. Talk to me about how that all came about.
So it was a process. It wasn't a like one big conversation. And the process, how it unfolded, was Asher said, listen, I'm non-binary, so I don't identify as a female or a male. I'm non-binary. And what is interesting to note in our culture today, in particular in an urban environment, it's really common. It's really, really common. Within Asher's school, probably 1/3 of the kids have new pronouns, and many have a new name. So Asher was not the name they were born with. Asher is the new name. And so this was a part of our conversation that sort of first began a little more than 2 years ago.
And Asher had the language to say non-binary.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. How do you go about being supportive? When you have this idea of your family and you know what your family looks like, and then there is a change, how do you go about being supportive within that? Because you're also going through a transition, right?
Well, I think the notion is what you think your family is. You know, you said you have an idea what your family is. One of the things I realized, we were 2 gay men, we had a child, a little girl. We wanted a little girl to grow up in her pink dresses and her perfect girl, perfect life, until she came to us and said, I'm a they, them, I'm non-binary, I'd like to explore everything. And all of a sudden, you know, as a gay man, it came crashing down. I wasn't getting what I thought I had, and how do I feel about that? What changed for me, though, was when I realized that in our household, this person feels so confident and comfortable in their own skin because of their dads. They can come home and say, I'd like to explore this now, and know that we're going to support them, because that's what we've been doing. So it's actually a lot easier because we have experienced it. So we are on their side, and they know it.
And they felt safe enough to come to you and have that conversation. Asher also has ADHD, so you've had to navigate conversations about developmental challenges. What are some of the learning and unlearning that you have had to go through to deal with that?
The number one is learning what ADHD is.
Yeah.
Because we went and had an assessment done, and I was gobsmacked. I had absolutely no idea that this would be our thing, because how the symptoms presented were emotional dysregulation. So it explained so much in a very, very short period of time. Another example was sensory sensitivity. So, you know, like the smell of the cooking is the smell of the cooking, and for Asher, sometimes those smells are deeply, deeply upsetting for them. So the first thing we had to learn was, what is this thing? How does it manifest for our child? And what we had to unlearn is things that we thought we held true, we couldn't hold true anymore. And I'll give you you one very basic example. What was true is we have to have a tidy home. Well, we have not only do we now have a teenager, but we have someone with weaker than typical executive functioning. Right. So the where are my things? Where do things go? For a neurotypical kid, they can learn that relatively easily. For our child, that is a bridge too far. It's just not going to happen. So we had to change our expectations of what was normal in our home.
Right. So parenting, man, is it humbling?
Really?
All the things you thought, all the things you thought, and it's like they just, you know, my friends Kat and Nat, they call it the sucker punch. Like you feel like everything's going swimmingly, and your kid's just like, ugh, and then it's like you have to relearn and sort of switch your expectations and all of these things. When Asher first approached you. And I know it was a series of conversations. Was there any pushback from you two? Was there any, you're too young to know? Was there any, this can't possibly be true? Like, was there any of that?
All of that.
All
of that, of course.
Yeah.
Because we're in a relationship, so we get to have our feelings too.
Yes.
Right? We kind of feel old-fashioned, and it's a whole new world for us.
Yes.
Like Bruce said, he had to look it up.
Yeah.
For me, the experience was ADHD. What is this? But about 5 years ago, I went to the doctor, and the doctor, something was wrong with my back, and they said, you have arthritis in your shoulder and your back. And I was shocked. And she said, brilliant, she said, you've always had it. I'm just telling you now, you have it so you can adjust to it. So it's like the ADHD. It's not. We don't have to put labels on people and think that's the end of something.
Yes.
It's actually the beginning of some clarity. And so knowing that is, I think, very important. And for me, the other thing the best advice I think we ever got about parenting was, there's no end goal. You're not going to get the kid right and then it's done. Every day is a new day. Get on the journey of today. You're never going to. 20 years, the kid will be perfect.
Right.
Our kid is perfect because they're alive and living and being with us, and they're awesome.
That's so good.
Yep.
One of the things you have to navigate outside of the being neurodivergent is the pronouns. So is that a challenge at all?
Yes,
They're new
every single
pronouns. You've gone
day.
through a whole life,
Yes.
calling Asher a different name and different pronouns. So that's a bit challenging.
It's grammatically incorrect. It really is. Like in my brain, I'm like, I am aligned with this. I am used to this,
Yeah.
and I get it right. I don't know what your stat would be. Maybe 50% of the time.
Yeah.
You got it wrong 10 minutes ago.
I literally did. I'm standing back there, and I was like, I am here to talk about it.
You didn't hear it.
I didn't even hear
said
it.
what? I said you just said she.
I did not.
I said, what?
Liar. Oh.
Lies.
Maybe just that once.
Listen, it's learning and it's re-educating for all of us, right?
Totally.
So there needs to be a period of time when you can do that learning and get that learning in. But I'm so happy that you've been able to come here and be so candid about everything. We've known Asher for years, so it's lovely to see the evolution and the transition and have you be able to talk about this on Cityline. Thank you so much.
Thanks
for
Both of you. Give it up for Bruce and Dennis.